My only goal for this video is to answer one question today. Is this the best movie of the year? Let's talk about it. What's up, Flick fans? Welcome back to the channel. I've never been more ready for a review. I've got the Holdovers sweatshirt, the Holdovers coffee mug, some Holdovers cookies, a Holdovers flask with nothing in it. YouTube. A big old vinyl soundtrack and even a Christmas card. Look at that. Needless to say, I'm ready for this. A cranky history teacher at a remote prep school is forced to remain on campus over the holidays with a troubled student who has no place to go. Directed by Alexander Payne, this film is rated R. It's language, drug use, brief sexual material. Now, some may see that and say, well, I don't know if it's a family movie. This is the most family R-rated movie I've seen in such a long time. Not the youngest kids, obviously, but I do believe this is one that you can sit down, especially if you're a little older, maybe the kids are older, and watching this, it's just a way to enjoy the perfect evening with each other. This is a Christmas movie at its core, and I say that bringing up the point that it may just be my favorite new Christmas movie. It's going to be hard to top some of my childhood classics, obviously, but this is the most well-rounded, loving, warm Christmas movie I've seen in so long. And someone on Twitter said it. They said it feels like a warm hug, this entire experience. And I think that's the best way to describe the Holdovers. Austin, you clearly liked it. What'd you like about it?
Well, we're waiting.
I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm sorry. Sometimes you watch a film and just the way it's progressing in the beginning, you're getting to know these characters. You may not like all of them and all of their actions, but there's at least something behind each integral main character in this movie that you can either sympathize with, gravitate towards, or form an emotional attachment to. With Paul Giamatti, who plays Paul beautifully, brilliantly, this is worthy of an Oscar nomination. At this point, it's worthy of an Oscar win, and I'll talk more about that here in a second, but he plays an angry, bitter man who's been at the same place his entire life, never really venturing out and doing the things that he says he doesn't want to do, but at the same time, there are a couple of lines in the film to where he starts to express, maybe I do want to live, I'm just living comfortably now. And that's the beautiful thing about his character, is as we learn more about this grumpy, cranky, Scrooge-type character, we start to resonate more with where he comes from because of that emotional turmoil that he's been through, but also that he's going through now. And that's so beautifully conveyed to us by this script, by Alexander Payne. It's crazy how simple character development can be if you do it right, and it's so simple at points in this movie, but I learned so much about him, and part of that's the amazing performance, but the other part of that is where he goes, who he meets, and really gets to know along the way. And one of those characters is Angus Tully, Dominic Sessa, his first performance. Not his first performance in a big blockbuster movie. No, his first performance in any movie, in any project, ever. Where did they find this guy? Brilliant! Susan Shopmaker is the casting director. Susan Shopmaker is a genius. Absolutely brilliant for finding someone who feels like a seasoned vet. Someone who feels like he's been in Hollywood for years making movies, and this is finally the project where you're like, okay, now that guy's is an Oscar-worthy actor at work. No, this is his first project, and I believe he is an Oscar-worthy actor because this lone performance is worthy of a supporting actor nomination. I'm going to be pushing for that for the next several months. I want to see it. I think we should see it. I'm going to fill out my Critics' Choice nominations ballot this weekend, and you bet your ass he'll be on that ballot.
What's your profanity?
I also have to shout out the writer, David Hemmingson. Alexander Payne did an amazing job behind the camera, but this script is one of the definitive screenplays of the year. But the other performer of note here is divine Joy Randolph. And at first, I thought it was very obvious what they were trying to do with her character to allow us to sympathize with her. And it was working, but I was hoping there would be more to her than that. And through this performance, through the writing, the way that she is fleshed out as we go, especially when they all kind of get together and leave the premises for a very short period of time, those moments are some of my favorite moments of the year between those three, and even when she's by herself in a room, and what happened to her, it's not really a spoiler, but I'll wait until you see the film, but it's tragic, It's heartbreaking. But this movie is also just really honest with its audience. It never becomes self-indulgent. There's a dash of cheese at the end, a little bit of sugar, the sweetener on top that I believe the film earns. You know, a lot of the times a film like this will not warrant that very cliche, okay, it didn't really earn that feel-good moment, or, you know, this bond between these two characters isn't really good enough for that amount of payoff. But The Holdovers is. It is that good. It is that well written. It is that warm. And I mentioned honesty, and not only the way the film plays with the audience, but the characters to each other, the way that they open up, and even without saying something to where it feels so obvious, they are able to read each other. And hey, that'll happen when you're stuck in one place with people that maybe you don't want to be with for an extended period of time. That's happened to me before, circumstantially. And you know what? You begin to warm up to each other, learn more about where the other person is coming from, and not to judge so harshly, which is what Paul does at the beginning, which is kind of what all of them do. But Paul has been someone for so long that is so set in his ways and stingy, for good reason, some would say, but very confident in the fact that he is sticking to his roots and the roots of the school. Barton is a very firm and grounded facility, even though it feels like Paul is really the only one sticking to that and going up against some of the characters that he does in the beginning. And one ongoing bit, the whole reason he's stuck there in the first place, that's a great example of the humor that works so beautifully in The Holdovers. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's not. It's really on the nose. The moment that we see in the trailer where he's chasing Angus throughout the entire school, I saw that in the trailer and I said, I don't know if this film is going to warrant that kind of over-the-top looking situation, but it does. And every question I had before the film started, and every moment where I was like, okay, this could go in a direction to where it just starts to lose itself, it never did. And I was so invested in not only each individual character, but the entirety of this situation and the group of kids that we start out with. That bond was great, but it really just ends up being a Paul, Angus, and Mary story through most of the movie. I was okay with them not being a part of that. Carrie Preston is great as Miss Lydia. She adds yet another layer to the character of Paul and the glee that he is evoking when he gets to have a conversation with her and showing us that there is
more than meets the eye.
That was bad. Naheem Garcia as Danny, he's a part of a couple of integral emotional moments, and that's what's so cool about The Holdovers, man. It made me feel emotional. It's the same feeling that I get for a lot of these classic Christmas movies, but also some of these 80s, these 70s and 80s classics that I hold so close to me, I know and I love. They're so simple, but the characters are so full of life. I think of Ferris Bueller, which is a comedy like The Holdovers, just two drastically different styles of film, right? But you get to know the characters so well, and by the time the movie's over, you kind of know that you're never going to see him again. I mean, I know I'm going to rewatch this movie eventually, but we always leave at that point in their lives, and I want to know where they go after this. I don't want a sequel. That's not what I'm saying here, but there is an emotional connection that is so rare when it comes to a movie like this that I can only name a few in my lifetime that I've seen to where I have connected so heavily to one or a group of characters. And these three on screen, this is one of my favorite pairings I've ever seen in a comedy, in a Christmas movie, and the best of this year. And I'm going to make a comparison here. If you're new to this channel, you're not going to realize what this means, but I felt the same way when this film ended, or very similarly to how I did for a movie like Sing Street. And you all know how much that film means to me. I feel like there will be critics that will roll their eyes when everything just comes together and wraps up, but that wasn't me. I was so emotional. Both times I've watched it twice. Once with me, once with my wife. The wife loved it. That's when you know. The soundtrack is wonderful, the aesthetic, the way that it looks, set in the 70s, it really captures that era, in my opinion. I compared it more to an 80s movie, just the feeling you get when you watch an 80s movie, and also that visual style, that film grain, the occasional blip or two on the screen. I love the way it all looks and feels. It's like you're there in the moment throughout the entire film. Austin, do you have any negatives? Would you stop raving?
Nope.
There's a guy who is supposed to be a good football player, and when he throws it, I didn't believe it. That's... What do you want me to say?
Nothing.
Folks, here's my dilemma. There is a picture of Cillian Murphy's face right there. I've seen Oppenheimer 3 times. I think it is slowly becoming one of my favorite Christopher Nolan movies. I believe the word masterpiece is warranted for a film like Oppenheimer. It was far and away my #1 movie prior to seeing The Holdovers twice. And y'all know, I don't like giving a movie a perfect score if I've only seen it once. I haven't seen Holdovers once. I've seen it twice. So it looks like we've got a little competition going on, which means I'm going to have to do another review of Oppenheimer, talk about the 4K. But right now, I am elated to report how The Holdovers delivers in every way. It is a genuine and heartwarming story with complex characters. Paul Giamatti delivers his most memorable performance to date. This is arguably Payne's best work. It is on demand right now. This is one that I would say go watch in a theater if it's still there, but if you have a chance to see it on demand, and come back because we are going to be talking about the Oppenheimer 4K Blu-ray, and I may have a little something to give away in that video, a little something special, and we'll also kind of dive into the screenplay just a little bit. Thank you so much for watching. I forgot to talk about Oscars with The Holdovers. Yeah, so when we're talking Best Actor, it's obvious that Paul Giamatti will be nominated. Right now, he is my favorite in the competition. That does not mean he's my favorite to win it. I think this is going to be one of the toughest Best Actor categories we've ever seen, but he's absolutely getting nominated, and if I had to choose personally right now, he would be my favorite. Dominic Sessa is tough because I don't know if voters are going to take him as serious as they should, right? Because it's his first time. You got to earn your stripes in Hollywood, kid. Right now, I'm going to say because the category is so packed with recognizable and notable names, I don't believe he gets in. But again, I am in the boat, firmly in the boat, that he should get in. And the final acting possibility, Divine Joy Randolph, I think at this point, I think she may slide in because it's such a beautiful and layered performance, because there's so much depth to her character, and she gives it her all. One scene in particular in that kitchen, you know what I'm talking about, was phenomenal. Does it get screenplay? I think it does. I don't think there's any way that it doesn't. Maybe one or two technical awards here or there. I would vote for cinematography personally, but that category is so stacked this year. The soundtrack is wonderful. I don't know about the original score. Best Picture, you know, normally these crowd pleasers, they have a shot at taking home the victory. This year, you have really big contenders like Oppenheimer and Barbie, Poor Things. The Holdovers, I would give it the 4th or 5th best shot to win Best Picture as of now, but we have to see what it's going to do at some of these other smaller awards. All right, thank you so much for watching. I'm done rambling. I'll be back tomorrow with a 4K review.